Good morning, and welcome to this, our second week of Summer Forum. My, what a difference a week makes. Thank you. I guess I don't even have to itemize the things. I just remember earlier in the week when the Supreme Court in effect said, stop bothering us about four little words when there's 1,000 pages that mean what Congress meant. That's my interpretation of the Supreme Court's interpretation of why in a couple of weeks here at Summer Forum we'll have some local experts explaining what's going on behind the scenes now as to the tens of thousands of people in Utah who are in limbo right now about their health care. But maybe we'll learn more about it. So many of our members have been living the love and leading the struggle for marriage equality for all these years. This can be a time of gratitude and celebration, and for the whole congregation. Let's do it again. Let's applaud our... For me, I think I will never forget seeing on television individuals whose loved ones had been murdered, looking straight at the alleged killer and saying, I forgive you. In my lifetime, that is one of the most moving expressions of, yes, as the president said and sang, amazing grace that I'd ever seen. And then kind of the final coda of the week was look in the internet and find out that the Pope has asked this social activist by the name of Naomi Klein to be a partner in an international climate change conference. My wife has her book out on our coffee table and refers to it regularly. She has a book called This Changes Everything. And maybe when this conference is over, she'll say, this changes everything again. But here we are, a time of celebration, a time to share our dreams, a time to center our hearts and minds and bodies in a sense of wholeness that sometimes even good news requires. We're going to begin with the sound of a flute by Katrina Brown. She's only been in Salt Lake City a few months, 8 months I'm told, but she's won a place in our choir as an alto, and she's won a place in our musical ensemble as a flutist. Some of you who were here for the evening of the Earth Day cantata remember hearing her lovely flute. She's a study abroad advisor at the University of Utah, so we're hoping that university will keep her around for some time to come. But Katrina, I'm going to ask you now to begin our service with your presentation of the Debussy music. I'll only take a minute to introduce our presenter this morning. There are a few paragraphs that summarize a life that she has, where she's been given all kinds of presentations on meditation, both the theory of it and the practice of it, and we will be experiencing both this morning. I do just want to say that for some years, Unitarian Universal Association has had a national organization of Buddhist Unitarians, and over 100 congregations have official local chapters. And now this congregation, as of a few weeks ago, officially has such a chapter. And so if you'd like to get more information or join the chapter, right outside this door, when our program is over, there'll be a place for you to sign up. So Shirley is going to come up here and speak about the meaning and the theory of mindfulness, and then she will go here and give us a guided meditation so we can not just hear about it, but experience it. Shirley, welcome.
Hello, dear friends. It's so nice to see all of you here, and some that I don't know, and I look forward to meeting. I'm delighted to talk about mindfulness and Buddhism and the path with heart. However, you might find these 20 minutes to be insufficient, and I'd like to invite you to come and sit with us in meditation. We meet 2 times a month here at the church, and we can extend this conversation in that way. I have one gentleman that has said what I think about the Buddha as a philosopher, and I would like to put this context of this Buddhism and mindfulness underneath the context of a philosophy. And he was a philosopher and an Oxford Don, and actually began the Oxford Center for Buddhist Studies and wrote many books about Buddhist philosophy. And one of the things that he said was that the Buddha was one of the most original and brilliant thinkers of all time. He says that it argues that we can know far more about the Buddha than is fashionable among scholars to admit, and that his thought has a greater coherence than is usually recognized. And in the book, he stressed the fact that he felt that Buddhist philosophy should be available to every individual. And I hope that when we look at the functions of mindfulness, that you'll see why that application may be of benefit. Another notable non-Buddhist is Daniel J. Siegel. And he's quite vocal on YouTube and extensive speeches, and conducts a preschool at UCLA. Also in adolescent and adult psychiatry. And the way he has integrated the Buddhist philosophy and the mindfulness is truly remarkable, to make it really part of a person's life. And the whole point of making it a part of a person's life is it's based on one of those strong Unitarian tenets. How do we become self-reliant human beings? How do we take care of ourselves mindfully and carefully and compassionately? In his essay, Reflections on the Mindful Brain, he starts out by saying, "Welcome to the journey into the heart of our lives. Being mindfully aware, attending to the richness of our experiences, create scientifically recognized enhancements in our physiology, our mental functions, and our interpersonal relationships." Being fully present in our awareness opens our lives to new possibilities of well-being, and I might add, good health. He proposes that this ancient and useful form of awareness harnesses the social circuitry of the brain to enable us to develop an attuned relationship with our own mind. An attuned relationship to our own mind. So we look at the popularity of mindfulness today. It seems to be everywhere I turn, in every magazine that I open. There's another comment, another prominent personality saying how they've meditated and how they practice mindfulness and how it's changed their lives. And I really want to temper that down, because meditation and mindfulness is a totally personal journey. It's a totally personal, chosen path. What the Buddha did was he just showed us how to do it. And he said, he just told us how to do it, and he said, you don't have to follow me, but everything that comes your way, no matter who says it, no matter what kind of regalia they're saying it wrapped around, if it doesn't resonate with your own heart's sense, then don't go there. So this way of discernment is something that is part of the mindfulness practice. I was attending a contemplative faculty group, and this group is a group of professors in all different departments who have come together at the U to talk about putting mindfulness or contemplation in the classroom. And one of the faculty members said that she feels like when the students come into their classroom, they've got their cell phones and their iPads, they're disassociated from the present moment, and she has to spend so much time getting them on the topic, getting on the task. And she was basically saying that in private conversations, this totally dysfunctional student behavior, because of personal tragedy, because of suffering in one way or another, is really taking down the whole standards of the university and the content that's being offered there. And they're thinking that the mindfulness may be a way to give these students something to hold on to establish some stability in their hectic lives that they're leading, so that they can, in fact, be elegant students. But it's not just that the universities that are conducting mindfulness for students and faculty. In Canada, the UK, Australia, winning athletic teams meditate. Google, Microsoft, and other corporations run seminars using the best teachers and scientists in neurobiology that are making studies on the effects of mindfulness. They extol the advantages of mindfulness in medical research and shows the improvement there in immune function, addiction, chronic pain, depression, and for maintaining a balanced life. And at the summit, economic that is, a few months ago at Davos, John Kabat-Zinn and Richie Davidson, two of the most prominent researchers in neurobiology and neurocircuitry, conducted mindfulness at the Davos Economic Summit. So I hope you feel like you're in good company. Meditation provides a time and a place for self-compassion. It's an invitation to venture inward to the landscape of our heart-mind. And I want to use the word heart-mind together, because in Asia, where this tradition was initiated, the heart and the mind are referred as the same place. If you ask someone in Asia, where is your mind? They will touch their heart. So think with me along line, if you would, heart-mind. Some people say they can't meditate because their mind is too busy thinking, and they can't stop the thoughts. Well, right there, you've got a valuable insight into why mindfulness might be helpful. It's very hard for some people, and especially adolescents, to think about being alone and paying attention to what was going into their mind. Jack Kornfield, a wonderful meditation teacher, says, you know, the mind has no shame. It'll think anything. And sometimes it's kind of hard to sit there and watch what comes and think, where in the devil did this come from? And for others, the mind is like a dangerous neighborhood. You wouldn't want to go there alone. But R.D. Laing says it a little bit differently, a psychiatrist and a poet from England. He says the range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice that we fail to notice, there's little we can do to change until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. Failing to notice. What's going on when we fail to notice? What kind of thinking? Thinking without noticing. It happens a lot, doesn't it? The Buddha says it this way. He said, the mind is the forerunner of all conditions. Mind is their chief, and they are mind-made. If with an impure mind one speaks or acts, then suffering follows one, even as the cartwheel follows the hoof of the ox. If with a pure mind one speaks or acts, then happiness follows one like a never-departing shadow. So if something in our lives doesn't seem to be working, what are we thinking? Picture this cartoon with me. It's the examining room, and the patient is sitting on the gurney, and the doctor is standing next with the papers in his hands, and he says, it's been confirmed by the MRI that you are suffering from dumb, stupid, and repetitive thoughts. However, the thoughts are not the problem. Thoughts... Who? Oh, the physician? That's true, I know that. But this was a cartoon. We have to laugh at things that we take too seriously. The thoughts are not the problem. Thoughts are the nature of the mind. The problem is that we identify with our thoughts. We reify our thoughts like a child that puts on a cape and thinks they can fly. We're not our thoughts. Thoughts are impermanent. They rise and they fall away. It's in that rising and fall away that mindfully we observe these thoughts because we've established calmness and stillness in our minds. And when we make the observation of these thoughts that keep coming up, we make a selection. The beautiful thing about mindfulness is to choose, the moment of choice. As soon as we recognize, why am I thinking that? Why do I feel this way? We exercise discernment. What are my options here? Is this the only way to see this? What else? How else can I think about this? Constantly playing with what emerges in our consciousness. Looking at ourselves on this inner landscape, turning totally inward and finding out what's going on there. Across our earth are pathways that are trodden by animals, fish, birds and humans. There's pathways in the ocean, pathways in the sky, and trails and pilgrimages that we make across this land. I think that's a beautiful thought. These pathways sustain our life in various ways. And I am so grateful to the extraordinary writer, Robert McFarland, who's written 3 books. And he'll take a small knapsack and start walking. And the intricate way in which he sees landscape, the history that he studies to weave around the geology, the anthropology, everything about the places that he goes, it's like he just crawls into them and becomes part of it. It's like his heart beats with the heart of the earth. And this is what he says about his writing and his walking. This book could not have been written by sitting still. The relationship between paths, walking and the imagination is its subject, and much of its thinking was therefore done, was only possible while on foot. Although it's the 3rd book in a loose trilogy about landscape and the human heart, it need not be read in the company of its predecessor. It tells the story of walking 1,000 miles or more along old ways in search of a route to the past, only to find myself delivered again and again to the contemporary. It is an exploration of the ghosts and voices that haunt ancient paths, of the tales that tracks keep and tell, of pilgrimage and trespass, of song lines and their singers, and the strange continents that exist within countries. Above all, this book is about people and place, about walking as a reconnoiter inwards, and the subtle ways in which we are shaped by the landscapes through which we move. I want to take that image of landscape and pathway and apply it to our minds. Our minds are filled with neurocircuitry, like pathways. And the interesting thing about the pathways in our minds, we now know that the thoughts that we think actually carve those pathways. The neurocircuitry that we have in our brains can be changed by our thoughts. Now, I think that is an amazing opportunity to know that the changes that we're always thinking about in our lives have real fundamental manifestations in how we act, behave, and respond. The thoughts or the thinking that we do shape and change neural pathways in our brain, offering the hope that if we suffer from dumb, stupid, and repetitive thoughts, we can in fact change them as we look deeper into this inner landscape. So as we think about the path with heart, what are some of the neural pathways that may be in every human heart? I want to tell you the story of Private Anton Schmidt. In Germany, there was a sergeant during the Second World War, Anton Schmidt. Actually, he was an Austrian serving in the German army, and he saved more than 250 Jews from extermination. He disobeyed his superior officers and helped these men, women, and children escape by hiding them and supplying them with false identification papers. Sergeant Smith was executed by the Nazis for his acts. Sergeant Smith's actions reveal the wonderment and pain of what it means to realize one's true nature. While in prison waiting to be executed, Smith wrote to his wife of the horror of seeing children beaten as they were herded into ghettos to be shot. This is his quote in the letter. "You know how it is with my soft heart. I could not think and had to help them. My soft heart. I could not think. I had to help them." Where in his heart mind is this neurocircuitry, this compassion that lodges in every one of us to extend it to our fellow human beings? These words capture the sudden blossoming of the spiritual maturity brought on by the challenge we would all rather not to face. What we find in this story is that this impulse of compassion seems to arise out of the essence of our human nature. It happens millions of times each day among family members, friends, and even strangers. We can be just simply a simple, caring presence amongst those we care for and see every day. In The Path with Heart, the experience of compassion is related to 3 other expressions of the heart mind, and they all seem to arise unexpectedly. The first principle that the Buddha taught, and the first noble truth, was we all suffer. And we tend to push that away a lot. But if we recognize what is our core wound, what is our suffering, what is it we want to change, all of this has an enormous effect on us. And our compassion really comes out of recognizing why we suffer, why we have anguish. Where does this come from? And when we look at our own, and then we look at others, there's this feeling inside, we don't want them to suffer. I know what it's like. I hope they don't have to go through this. And we frequently say that when we're ill or when we're in despair. So this first noble truth of the Buddha really inspires our human desire to end suffering through compassion, and there are 3 other, what they're called immeasurables in Tibetan, and they're states of mind, and they're called divine abodes. Let me clarify this. So we have 4 states of mind that the Buddha talks about, and they're loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. Now, kindness, excuse me, darn it. Before I talk about kindness, I want to read to you what the Buddha says about compassion and this connection that we have with the First Noble Truth, that there is suffering within all of us. He says, resolve to be tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant with the weak and wrong, because sometime in your life, you will have been all of these. So along with compassion, then, is what we call loving kindness or metta. The literal translation from the Pali language of metta is unconditional friendliness. Unconditional friendliness. to people and to things and to events. It's a form of acceptance, isn't it? And this loving kindness can be, as we cultivate it and we feel it and we share it. Oh, thank you so much.
Sorry.
Thank you. It can be an antidote to our fear. It can be an antidote to intolerance, to impatience, aversion, and ill will. The Buddha frequently taught one thing and then showed you the opposite. It's kind of like I like to define mindfulness. If you want to know what mindfulness is, what's being mindless? And you get it pretty clear, don't you? So this loving kindness is something that is encapsulated in phrases, and you can make up your own, and I'll share some with you in the meditation. But, you know, we have this inner discourse that goes on all the time. And how much of our inner discourse is whining, complaining, if only, and why isn't it like this, and why in the hell did she do that, and what's going on here? And why can't I rule the world and take care of things? And so we're always wanting things to be different. And by replacing all of these kinds of discursive thoughts that really tear us down emotionally, we can say simple phrases like the Buddha suggests. Very simple phrase. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from sorrow. And when you say those words, may I be happy, imagine a pebble just gently falling down into a still pond, and feel happiness resonate within your heart-mind. May I be calm. Wait for that word to work through your body and your mind. These are experiential. They're not just words out there. May I be mindful, noticing moment to moment the feelings and the thoughts. So we have loving kindness, compassion, and this other one is one of my favorites. I like to call it appreciative joy. It's called empathetic joy. But this is the joy that is also unexpected. Somebody approaches you with a beautiful smile and a feeling, you can just feel it. They're coming toward you and they have this wonderful news. And they tell you, I'm getting married. I'm pregnant. My daughter's getting married. So what happens? We immediately assume that same joy as what we're hearing from them. We're sharing heart to heart that appreciative joy that has lodged in their hearts and in their lives. And then the last one is equanimity, sometimes called serenity or tranquility. But this is one of those words that is a true experience. When you're noticing your thoughts, try to latch on to the thoughts that give you equanimity, tranquility, and serenity, and repeat them, and repeat them. Because we constantly have these things, but we don't notice them enough. And so this mindfulness is a way to notice all these beautiful things that emerge in our lives. And of course, equanimity is great when we're faced with frustration at the pace of our lives, the limitations that we face in our lives, and it gives us a chance to pause. To pause. And when we do meditation, I'll introduce you to what I think is a magnificent pause. So these are sometimes called the mature emotions: compassion, loving kindness, or metta, empathetic joy, and equanimity. They're called the mature emotions because they transcend the basic human experience of anguish and the feeling of not having enough. if we were to cultivate these states of mind, you see, the lower states of mind of anguish and frustration wouldn't have much opportunity to grow. Mindfulness definitely is a path to change the things I can. And here's another pathway that I'd like to share with you. It's called An Autobiography in 5 Chapters, and it could be you. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. It's getting better. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. So now we're going to meditate. And I'd like to ask you to take a posture, wiggle around in your seat so that you feel balanced. Because this is a breath meditation, and we want your breath to be able to flow equally through your body. Try to have your back straight with your feet on the floor. Your arms could be resting on your thighs. And then just gently roll your shoulders around and just relax. Gently close your eyes. We'll begin with the words of Pablo Neruda, keeping quiet. Now we will all count to 12, and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for a second and not move our arms so much. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would not look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is all about. If we were not so single-minded at keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves, of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead in winter and later proves to be alive. Now, I'll count up to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go. I'm going to ring the glass bell and follow the sound of the bell into silence. From the silence, notice where it is in your body that you feel your breath. Maybe it's in your chest or your belly, your throat. Bring your awareness to your breath as you breathe in and out. Now bring this awareness of your breath to your nostrils. And on the next in-breath, notice the breath going into your nostrils, to the back of your throat. Feel a little coolness there. And then you'll feel the breath change direction, and you'll feel the exhalation. So in your next breath, notice where you inhale, pause, and exhale. Just glide along with the breath. Notice the breath in the whole body. The expansion on the in-breath and the contraction on the out-breath. Just this one object of concentration, breathing in and breathing out. Not trying to change anything. Not thinking, am I doing it right, or is this the way I should do it? In fact, follow the breath. Be the observer. Watch your own breath breathe you. One other dimension to this observation of our breath. When you breathe out, completely let go. You take the in-breath in, then you exhale, and you completely release. At the end of that exhalation, the body will bring in the next in-breath. Observe again. Breathing in and breathing out and letting go. Now, in this observation, silently put these words to the breath. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. A full awareness of the breath. This is the practice. And as you say those words, you can shorten them to just breathing in, and then you can shorten it to just in. So follow the breath. Breathing in, breathing out, fully aware of my breath. Maybe you find thoughts arising. This is what the mind does. So we gently notice that thought. It's like touch and go. You see the thought and you give it a name, remembering, thinking. And then just let it go like a puff of smoke in a clear blue sky. And bring your awareness back to the breath, to continually settle the mind. And then again, another thought will arise. And over time, the length between each thought becomes longer. And there becomes more stillness and peace. And the thoughts are less frequent. A thought arises, give it a name, let it go, and come back to the breath. Just this breath, breath after breath, fully aware. As we come to the close of our meditation, briefly reflect on this experience for you. What kind of changes have you noticed in your body, in your mind? An awareness of our breath, awareness of our thoughts, awareness of the sensations, and aware of the stories. These are the foundations of mindfulness. The Buddha said, the thought manifests as the word. The word manifests as a deed. The deed develops into habit, and the habit hardens into character. So watch the thought and its way with care, and let it spring from love, born out of concern for all beings. Please follow the bell into silence. May we bring our hands together and hold the respect for humanity as we say to one another, Namaste. Thank you.
Shirley, I'm going to ask you to rise back up where people can hear your answers. Anyone over here? Here?
So thank you, Shirley. Sally here.
Oh, hi, Sarah.
So not so much a question, though. You're free to comment on it. I went very, very deep within this meditation, and I was, it was even, I would say it was before thought. It was a deep body awareness as I felt the breath. And I really became aware as I let go of any attempt to guide the process or to change anything I was feeling in my body. As that tension left, I became very aware of my bronchioles and just how they started to open on their own. There was no efforting. There was actually a dropping away of that. And being that I teach anatomy, I was very fascinated with it because I could actually feel those smooth muscles just gently open up the tubes, and that balances the autonomic nervous system. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Sally.
I'm going to simply say that you and your colleagues will be right outside the door and can answer questions. And I'm going to encourage some of you who would like to join our local Buddhist Unitarian chapter. You can do so.